The selection of movies and TV was way more limited, and you had to rely on a programming schedule or a certain night of the week to watch your favorite show. If for some reason you had to miss it, taping it using a VCR was the only way to watch it later.
VCR. Have I seen these before? What does VCR stand for? Cinemas would have hit a lot harder back in the day. Now it's like, I feel like people prefer just to watch things on Netflix.
Prior to the internet, meant board games, cards, and tabletop games for entertainment. These games required face-to-face interaction to play. And
that whole face-to-face interaction has just diminished, man, over the years, because everything can just be accessed online, which is ironic, right? You'd think the internet will bring people and and connect people more, but it kind of just indirectly did the opposite. Right guys, your fellow Gen Z with a very curious mind. Today is going to be checking out another video from Recollection Road. This is life before the internet. You had to do what? You know, that is exactly how I feel as if I'm going to be reacting to this entire. I grew up when the internet was in play. I don't have any recollection of what life was like before the internet because I wasn't born, other than what my Gen X parents told me about it. So and from what you guys have been telling me on this deep dive I've been doing. So this has been a very interesting journey to say the least, and do you know what, I love doing these kinds of videos. So recently dropped a movie reaction to 2 movies. I did one to The Breakfast Club, a movie in the 1980s, and another one from the 1980s, Prince's Purple Rain movie, as well as a bunch of other stuff I got on there, like from reacted to full album reviews of some of Prince's full albums, such as Sign of the Times and Purple Rain, and I plan on doing some others like Led Zeppelin as well. So guys, if you haven't got on in the Patreon, you know what to do. Get in the description, check it out, check out the Patreon. You guys are gonna want to miss out. A lot of the stuff I post on there I cannot post on YouTube, so that's where you're gonna get a lot of the juicy stuff. But guys, with that being said, let's get straight into this video. Let's go. Look at that music off the jump, man. It's already bringing back memories that I don't remember. Okay. It's that windy phone, isn't it?
Prior to the 1990s, personal communication was pretty much still limited to phone calls and letters. In those days, long-distance calls were...
Phone calls and letters, letters being one of the primary forms of communication is still something that shocks me.
Was pretty much still limited to phone calls and letters. In those days, long-distance calls were expensive, and you had to plan your call in advance to avoid high fees.
What?
People would often write letters to friends and family as a way to keep in touch, and it could take weeks or even months for a response.
Weeks or months for a response? How did you even communicate long distance like that at that point? How did people even do long distance relationships? Surely that's just impossible. You don't even know, you can't even speak like that.
If you needed to find out information or learn something new, the only place to go was a library, a bookstore, or your outdated set of encyclopedias. There was no Google, no Wikipedia, and no instant access to information.
Wow.
You had to physically go somewhere, look through books, and hope they had the information you needed. Researching before the internet was a time-consuming task, as books were organized by subject and author, and you had to flip through pages upon pages to find what you needed.
Yeah, man. Like, I've heard of things adjacent to this. Like I feel like I've heard some of the Dewey Decimal System, whatever that is. It sounds complicated from what I've heard. I still can't get my head around it. But just imagining this being from what I have now is just so different, and you know, no internet, I can just look up anything. You guys, if you guys wanted to know something, you guys had to go to actually and get it physically. That's just different.
Through pages upon pages to find what you needed.
I cannot relate to that at all, man.
Records, 8-track tapes, cassettes, and finally CDs were how we built our music collections. Going to the record store was half the fun. Then buying an album and listening to it on a stereo or tape deck was the only way to control what music we listened to.
Tape deck?
The radio made for some long waits to hear the song you wanted, so it was much faster to just fast forward through a tape to find it.
Okay.
Only way to control what music we listened to. The radio made for some long waits to hear the song you wanted, so it was much faster to just fast forward through a tape to find it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, man, you guys had to record what you wanted to listen to on a tape.
TV, movies, and video games were not instantly at our fingertips either. There were no streaming services, no online gaming, and certainly no YouTube. You had to rent a movie on VHS, or watch it on TV when it aired, commercials and all. You also had to physically go to an arcade to play video games, if you didn't have an expensive home gaming system. The selection of movies and TV was way more limited, and you had to rely on a programming schedule or a certain night of the week to watch your favorite show. If for some reason you had to miss it, taping it using a VCR was the only way to watch it later.
VCR. Have I seen these before? What does VCR stand for? VCR. Let me search that real quick, man. VCR stands for video cassette recorder. Oh, okay, that's just another way of saying video cassette recorder. So where you had different types of cassettes, you had ones for videos, and then you had ones for just recording music, and this is what they look like. Is that what I'm looking at right now? Interesting. Okay. I don't know if I understand. Look, you guys fill me in, man, as well, if I misunderstood that. But that's just like, this is okay. This is looking interesting.
Taping it using a VCR was the only way to watch it later. Remember when you had to shop at a brick-and-mortar store? There was no Amazon, no online shopping, no home delivery, with the exception of pizza. You had to go to a store, physically look at a product, and pick it up off the shelf. If a store didn't have what you were looking for, you could go to another store or wait until it was restocked.
Wow.
Shopping was a time-consuming task, which required the consumer to manually compare prices and products.
Yeah, but I can't even stand shopping going in person. Like, I like doing online shopping, and that's what I'm used to. But imagining that as if that's the only thing I could do. Obviously, again, all of these things are contextual. If I was born during these times, like, I would understand, that would be the norm. But obviously, I always try to imagine what it'd be like if a Gen Z had traveled back to like the 1980s and this realm or whatever, like when before the internet. And I always try to imagine like how a Gen Z would be reacting to like a lot of these things. I could even do a skit on it, how a Gen Z would be reacting to in real time if he was born during these times. And I also think it might be a boy thing as well. Maybe girls would find it less harder to do those kinds of things, but food for thought.
Before the internet, making travel plans was much different. You had to rely on physical maps and printed travel guides to plan your trip.
Yeah, man.
You couldn't just type in your destination and get directions.
Yeah, man.
You had to physically mark your route and plan for stops along the way.
Crazy.
Booking a trip was also a hassle, as you had to call travel agencies to make arrangements. And if you wanted to know what a location was like, you had to rely on pictures and travel brochures, or word of mouth from friends and family.
It makes sense. That makes sense, though. I feel like I can imagine, though, like, surely there was a bit of propaganda going on. Like, you know, what you saw in these pictures just wasn't exactly what these places look like, which would make sense because you can't really verify it unless you have, like you said, word of mouth. But other than that, like, I could just go on Google and search something and just, you know, get a TikTok showing me what life is like in these, or what the place is like as of yesterday, because everyone's just posting things. So times have changed, man. Times have changed.
The idea of a game night prior to the internet meant board games, cards, and tabletop games for entertainment. These games required face-to-face interaction to play, and sometimes it encouraged communication and teamwork, as players would strategize and work together to win. There was no online games, so players had to actually be in the same room to play. This often led to fun and memorable moments that brought people closer together.
I love how this commentator is describing it. Like, we had to have face-to-face interaction because, do you know, like, you know, when he puts it like that, I guess it just really, like, exemplifies just how much, like, that whole face-to-face interaction has just diminished, man, over the years, because everything can just be accessed online, which is ironic, right? You'd think the internet will bring people and and connect people more, but it kind of just indirectly did the opposite.
Watching movies, especially new releases, meant heading to the movie theater. The cinema experience was so special, with the sound and picture quality being the best you could get, and the smell of movie theater popcorn made these trips a blast for sure. It was magical to sit together in a dark room and be transported to another world, if only for a couple of hours.
I can imagine cinemas would have hit a lot harder back in the day. Now it's like, I feel like people prefer just to watch things on Netflix. Like, I do more watching Netflix through FaceTime with my friends on the phone versus watching a movie in person. Like, I can't remember the last time I went into a cinema, to be honest, to watch a movie at least.
Cooking before the internet often meant relying on handwritten recipes, cookbooks, and word of mouth to make new dishes. People had to experiment with ingredients and rely on their own intuition to create something new. This often led to a greater appreciation of food and cooking, as people took the time to learn and understand different cooking techniques and ingredients. There was also a greater sense of community, as people would share recipes and cooking tips with each other and come together for communal meals.
That makes sense. Basically, what I'm getting is people used to use their brains back in the day. Now people just have everything accessible to them already.
Come together for communal meals.
That's basically what this commentator is basically saying, right?
News was completely different before the internet. People relied on nightly news, newspapers, and magazines for their daily news, as there was no 24-hour news cycle or instant access to news updates. People would have to walk to a newsstand or subscribe to a newspaper that could be delivered to their door. We would often have to wait until the next day to read the latest news, as there were no breaking news alerts or real-time updates. The news was also generally limited to a specific region or country, as international news was often reported days after the event.
Oh, wow. Do you know, this makes me deep why I keep seeing newspapers in the real world. Because I'm like, who reads a newspaper nowadays? And I just deep, oh, wait, I need to stop looking at it from just my own perspective. There's Gen Xers out there, and maybe some older millennials, I mean, even definitely some boomers that still read the newspapers to this day. I'm wondering, like, why can't people just go on their phones and just check it that way? But I realize some people just like doing things the old-fashioned way. And I hear it, like, because I've personally never read a newspaper. Like, okay, I have, but it's like not like intentionally. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, not because I wanted to, just because I was fascinated at, like, why do people read these things? Like, why don't they just go on their phones? So to see, like, that's obviously the main form of media back then, which makes sense. I can see how people still now who kind of like that old-fashioned way of doing things to this day, why they still read newspapers. I don't think any Gen Zer would voluntarily read a newspaper. I'll be shocked if I see one.
International news was often reported days after the event.
You Gen Xers are keeping that one alive, man. Those newspapers.
Remember when people relied on film cameras and Polaroid cameras to capture memories? Digital cameras were not widely available until the late 1990s.
Makes sense.
So this meant physically going to a store to buy film and then having the pictures developed, often waiting days or even weeks to see the final results.
Days or weeks.
You also had to be careful with the number of pictures you took, as film was limited and you couldn't just delete a picture if you didn't like it. The pictures were physical prints, and people would store them in photo albums or scrapbooks to preserve the memories.
Things are just so much more longer back in the day, and things are so easy now.
The ways in which we communicate clearly have been drastically altered. Handwriting letters or speaking to someone face-to-face has been replaced by texting. Physically writing the words or using a manual typewriter meant then using correction fluid to correct any mistakes. This created a greater sense of craftsmanship, and it was a time when people took pride in their penmanship or the speed that they could type out a letter with few mistakes.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, that's just not a thing now, at least not from my perspective. That's another one of those things. Like, I can't, again, when I was in college, all I was doing was writing on an Apple pen and an iPad. And I think it's going to get worse. I think the Gen Alphas, they're probably going to be doing that in high school. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, writing with a pen is just becoming obsolete. Well, it's not. There's obviously some still to this day uses of it. I'll be honest. Obviously. But I can imagine the next 30 years, that's writing with a pen might be something that Gen Zers just aren't doing. Like if you had the choice, let's say if you had the choice. Because obviously not everyone can afford those things, right?
Despite the limitations, life before the internet was full of fun and adventure.
Wow.
People made the most of what they had, and they cherished their personal connections, especially face-to-face interactions. Knowing your neighbors and actually answering the door when someone knocked was the way things were done back then. I hope this journey back reminded you of the simple things in life and how technology has altered our lives completely.
Yeah, man.
Let me know in the comments if I missed anything, and maybe even consider supporting the channel over on Patreon.
I'm gonna like this video. Look, honestly, from watching that video, I think it just really puts into perspective just how convenient things are for me now. If it wasn't for me checking out these videos from back in the day, I wouldn't really, do you know what I'm saying, realize how much things have changed and just how different my life could have been if I was born like 20 years earlier. I also do really find it interesting because a lot of you guys watching this like will be able to like have a clear kind of understanding of what life was like before and be able to identify that change and just how much it really has impacted society. Obviously, all I know is how things are now with the internet, but you guys kind of saw kind of how people were like before the internet versus how people are now. So I'll be very curious to see kind of what you guys have noticed are some of the big changes in just in the way people interact. I wonder what you guys will say, because obviously from what I can see just from how the internet has been when it was like in the early 2000s to how it is in like the 2020s, I can see a transition of people just getting a lot more introverted and conscious of like a lot more at a young age. So it's people are a little bit less open to talk to strangers and like interact with people in real life. So that's just one of the things I've noticed. So I'll be very curious to see what you guys have to say. And of course, like he said, look, is there anything that you guys remember that maybe wasn't mentioned in this video that you guys want to comment down below and let this fellow Gen Zer know? Look, I love doing this rabbit hole. And if you guys want to see more of the videos from me, look, I have a playlist links at the end that you can check out. And I'm doing a series that you guys might be interested in, just checking out some 1980s vlogs. You know, so if you guys want to see that as well, then consider checking that out. But of course, guys, look, if you made this point, comment down a green heart so I know who my real ones are, or hashtag flex up for those of you guys that are still struggling with emojis. And of course, guys, look, like the video before you head on out. I've been your boy JayFlex. This has been Recollection Road, Syrian Casing, life before the internet. And for those of you guys who made it to this point, you guys have been absolutely wonderful. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.